it's me, James. Happy Sunday evening to you all. I am filming this video on Sunday evening, June the 22nd, 2025, and I'm about to conduct the Oracle Outlook video reading for the week ahead, and that will be starting June the 23rd, 2025. If this is your first time here, I'd like to say welcome and thank you for taking time out to visit and check out this video and maybe check out some other content on the channel as well. And if you're a returning viewer and subscriber, I'd like to thank you for circling back and continuing to support the work that goes into the content on the channel. So I'm so excited, you guys, about the decks that are going to be used for this week's video reading. On the left is a deck of my own creation. It is the Mitchell Cartomancy Cards. I made this for myself and I made it in a fancy little tin there. And the impetus for the deck, or the inspiration, is that I, while filming my very popular series on my personal study and practice of cartomancy using playing cards, people would every now and again ask me about working with the cards in terms of memorizing all the meanings of the 52 card deck. And so I was inspired to create, it's kind of like an oracle version of my playing card practice, where there is an image in the center of the card. I wanted to keep the borders of the traditional standard playing card deck and insert an image in the middle. And that was so a person could maybe riff off on the image, maybe more in an intuitive oracular fashion. So that is this deck. I'm very excited. It's one of my personal favorites in my own practice. And on the right, you guys, this was a deck that was gifted to me by my viewer and supporter Ismael, who has been given lots of shout outs in this series because he inspired me to work with reading two cards in a video reading together. So he gifted me this deck as a surprise. It is a Lenormand deck. He calls it the Lenormand Glyphs, and I will be leaving a link to the deck. He sells it through Make Playing Cards, just like I do. And I will be leaving information on that if you want to support the deck. So now the deck came shrink wrapped, so I'm housing my deck in an extra plastic case that I just happen to have on hand. And so I'm very excited about it. So we're going to be looking to see what this deck has to say, because I posted a initial reading that I did with the deck over on my post. They used to call it the community tab, but on the post page of my channel, if you want to go there and check it out, the deck really wants to be worked with. So you'll see the details in that post. Okay, so I'm very excited. So I'm going to go ahead and take a few moments to shuffle the cards. We're going to be working with 2 lines of 5. Top line is going to be from my Mitchell Cartomancy Cards, and then the bottom line is going to be from Ismael's Lenormand Glyphs deck. Alright, the cards have been shuffled, cut, and dealt, and so I was thinking that I'm going to read the columns. Instead of reading horizontally, I'm going to read vertically. So starting with the card on the top left, opening the line up, we have the 4 of Spades. So the 4 of Spades is known for me in the system that I work with. It's known as the sickbed card, and you can clearly tell by the image there's somebody lying in bed who is under the weather, so to speak. And so this card can be talking about illnesses, but I'm going to go with the idea that here we have with the suit of spades, a problem or a challenge starting things off. And so the 4 is a number that can represent stability and security. So there may be a challenge or a block to states of stability and security, right? But again, being the illness or the sickbed card, it can also be talking about moving through some form of healing or recuperation process or experience, right? So this card is about a need for rest. It's a need to heal, to recover, a time for rejuvenation. And I will say, full confession, this card is really speaking to me in the moment because today, like I said, is Sunday, June the 22nd, and I went to work, one of my 2 jobs. I went to work. I'm going to put the card down. I went to work, and I have had a migraine. I've talked about these before, so I've had a migraine episode most of the day. It got to the point where I had to leave my job and come home and rest. So I'm feeling slightly better enough to make this video because I want to maintain some level of consistency when it comes to reading the cards, because the cards are a huge part of my life and I love working with them. But so this card is speaking to me in the moment because I'm in a healing state of mind, if you will, right? Because the suit of spades can represent the element of air for me, and that represents states of mind, mindset, thinking, things of that nature. So I'm in a healing state of mind, right? But generally speaking, this can be a card that we're talking about healing states of dis-ease, right? So that's what I want to say about that. So now let's see what the Lenormand Glyphs card here has to say, maybe to further elaborate on that. And here we have Crossroads. Okay, so Crossroads is a card that can talk about being at a place where you need to make a decision, right? And that makes perfect sense with the card from the suit of spades being above it. So Crossroads, like I said, is about being at a place where we need to make a choice or a decision. So starting off the week, it could be that you are being encouraged to look at options, alternatives, to make the best possible choice or take the best course of action. Right? So now it could be too that there's somebody who, or people who are going through an actual recovery process, recuperation process, healing process, and they're being faced with needing to make some choices around that and looking at options and alternatives regarding that. Now it could also be too, in a much more positive sense, this card, 4 of spades, is just asking us to slow down, right? To take some time out for a break, a rest, things like that as well. It also could be, what can you do to get some more sleep? Maybe looking at your sleeping patterns, your sleeping routine, and even with those, that still would require choices in regards to time, so you have more time to sleep. Then it would require looking at some alternatives, some options to incorporate more sleep time into your schedule, right? So again, we have the 4 of spades at the top and Crossroads at the bottom. Now the reason why the deck selection is because if you are a Lenormand person, some decks in the Lenormand system, family, what have you, have playing card inserts, right? Ismael's deck does not. So I thought it would be a great combination to work with a deck that was really all playing cards, right? To make up for the insert not being present, right? So that's the reason for the deck selection. I didn't mention that before. So the reason why I'm mentioning that, it will be interesting to see if it appears in this top line. But the Crossroads has the playing card insert traditionally of the Queen of Diamonds, right? So this could be a card that can talk about a woman who needs to make a decision, right? And it could be regarding this in particular. And then Diamonds in playing card Cartomancy for me represents the physical and the material. So it could be about, her physical well-being. We're going with that. Or energy, time being one of those things that, energetically we invest in and spend on, right? So it could be looking at that as well. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next column. Top of the column we have the 2 of Diamonds. This card for me talks about sharing our resources. Yeah, in the image you will see a couple who is sharing Chinese takeout. So in the literal sense, this could be a card that talks about being invited to lunch or dinner in the course of the week. But if it's not that, then this card can be about, like I said, sharing resources. The suit of diamonds, which when I mentioned the Queen of Diamonds here, again, can represent the physical and material, but it also talks about our resources, our assets. And then the 2 here could be a number that talks about help and support. Sharing, like I said, so it could be, sharing what you have in terms of resources with another person. Now, it could literally mean that somebody may hit you up for cash, right? And you may have to look at, are you in a position to help that person out financially speaking? Are you willing to give some financial aid, support, or help, right? And now it could go either way too. You could also be in a position of needing to receive some financial aid, help, or support. Usually for me, when a card like this, and we're talking about, the exchange of money perhaps, is closer to the left side of the line, it usually represents that you are going to be in the position of giving that. If it's towards the end of the line, it would be you are more in the receiving end of that help, support, or assistance. Yeah. But again, the 2 of diamonds can be about the literal sharing of food, meaning like we're breaking bread with another person over lunch or dinner, that kind of thing, or that we are sharing our resources with other people, our assets. And one of those could be in the literal form of money, right? So there's that. Now, I will say this as a cautionary thing, that somebody may need to make some changes regarding their diet, right? If they're experiencing healing, something of that nature, it may require or may be part of the process taking a look at what we are eating in terms of food, and maybe taking a look at our diet and overall nutrition. Now, I'm saying that with the disclaimer that I am not a health practitioner, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a nutritionist, anything like that. But I'm just noticing that we have the sick bed card here, and then the food, the breaking bread with another person card here. Okay, so now let's take a look at what's underneath. And here we have heart. Okay, so now the heart is a card that talks about our feelings and emotions, right? So I will say this as I put the card down. So if it is talking about the sharing of our resources, it may be something that we are passionate about. The heart is all about passion, right? If we're sharing, it's because we come from a place of really being passionate about what that is that we are offering to other people, right? Now, if it's about money or something else like that, there may be a bit of an emotional undercurrent, again, with the heart being about feelings and emotions. Now, Lenormand is best read in combination. So here we have the combination of crossroads and heart. So here we have emotional choices or emotional decisions that need to be made, or a decision about love and romance. But whatever the decision, or they're looking at the options or the alternatives, there is an emotional component to it. And that would be heart. Now, the insert for the heart card is the Jack of Hearts. So the Jack of Hearts is a card that can talk about younger people, people of either gender. So there is that to consider. So it may be the Queen of Diamonds here is making a decision about a child here. Right, and of course there would be some feelings of affection for that child. Now the Jack of Hearts in my cartomancy system that I have curated and adopted over the years, the Jack of Hearts can be a card that talks about being favored. It's known as the favorite, right? So it could be making a choice or a decision around something that is favored. And if I go here, it could be maybe something that is, going out for your favorite food. Something of that nature. But there may be a favor or a favorite aspect of this dynamic here. And then the only other thing I will say about the Jack of Hearts. It'll be interesting if it shows up in the top line. But the other thing I would say about the Jack of Hearts is that it can represent needing to make a sacrifice. Yeah. So if I bring that element into these two cards, then the choice or decision that's of an emotional nature, right, may involve making a sacrifice. And then how do you feel about the sacrifice that you potentially could have to make, right? So that's what I would say about these four cards. Now let's move to this column. And this column is going to be significant because it talks about the heart of the matter, the central issue, or the focus, right? So here we have at the top, we have, oh gosh, we have the 10 of spades. So I'm going to put this down for a moment. There's a pattern here. So we have a spade, then a diamond, and then another spade. So for some people, regarding the material or the physical, there may be some ups and downs. When I get a spade and then another pip emblem and then a spade again, it usually represents ups and downs regarding whatever that central emblem is. So here we may have financial ups and downs. We may have things having to do with our energy level, right? If this is about illness, states of dis-ease, needing to heal and recover, there may be fluctuations with our energy level, right? I can attest to that when I'm going through my migraine episodes. If I feel like a washcloth that's been wrung out, yeah? So there may be, going with that, there may be some energy fluctuations, things like that. Okay, so now the 10 of spades. Now you could tell by the image, it's not necessarily a pleasant card, right? But this card talks about emotional upset. You can clearly see by the image on the card that the woman in the image is upset, right? So this is, an upset to the point where you are metaphorically pulling your hair out, right? There's a situation that's going on that makes you want to pull your hair out, right? So there's that. This card usually talks about what we fear, right? So, and it's coming up because 9 times out of 10, there's a situation in our lives that is reaching a state of closure. That's the 10. The 10 can represent transition, something coming to a state of completion, that kind of thing. But the 10 of spades would indicate that, having a fear of failure around that. Right? So there may be, if we go with the idea that there is a problem with for someone regarding their financial well-being, yeah, financial well-being, it may be that they're coming from it with the mindset that they are a failure because they are in that position, right? And that might not necessarily be the truth. It could just be, life happens, sometimes, unfortunately, we fall on hard times. And so it could just be that more than it being a reflection of the person involved. Right? But like I said, this card is about being upset. It's about tears. So I would say with the tears thing, if it's not somebody who's literally upset and literally crying, it could be a need for emotional release, heart. Right? So there's something where maybe you need to emote, meaning you need to release maybe pent up feelings. Right, and I love it with the heart being under here because this is like emotional undercurrent, yeah? So maybe emotions that have been either suppressed or pushed down or coming up. And they're coming up with the idea that, remember, this is about healing. They're coming up so though that experience that those emotions are connected to can be healed, can be resolved. So that's what I want to say about the 10 of spades. Now the middle Lenormand card underneath it, here we have Fox. Okay, so then Fox could be a card, I'm going to put this down, in a challenging sense now, because I'm sticking with the idea that the suit of spades can represent blocks, challenges, and obstacles. Yeah, the Fox in a challenging sense can represent manipulation, yeah? So it could be somebody is upset with somebody else, another person, heart, relationship, for a sense of manipulation. Right? That's one aspect. Another, in a more positive sense for me, Fox is a card that can be referring to job and employment, right? And so here we have maybe an emotional decision regarding job and employment, right? And with that, if I mirror the cards in here, we're being asked to look at our options and our alternatives when it comes to job and employment. Now, I will say, if there is a need for maybe more money, right, then this card could be about having more than one source of income, yeah, because of the number 2. So this could be like dual income situations, right, as a person. Who works 2 jobs, I can relate to that, right? And then fox, in this case, can represent multiple jobs. It's a card of little jobs, right? And why are we doing that? We're doing that so we can free ourselves up, because this card is about independence as well. So somebody may need to claim a greater sense of independence by working more than one job, right? And then that would eliminate, spades can be about elimination, eliminate the need to be dependent on someone else for help or assistance on a financial level. So there's 2 things going on here depending on your perspective, your experience. I always say when I'm doing these readings that what is said or stated in the course of this reading is not going to apply to 100% of the people who are watching, which is why I like to offer more than one perspective or one possibility. Because if one doesn't resonate, another one might. So again, the fox is about, on the challenging side, it can be a card that talks about manipulation, right? But in a more positive aspect, it can be the card that talks about job, employment, skill, being independent, doing what you need to do to survive, yeah? Because that's what foxes do. Foxes just do what they need to do to survive. I'm hearing in my head, it's not personal. They're just doing what they need to do to survive, yeah? And that may be some aspect here. As I said that out loud, it could be, the 10 of spades could be saying somebody's taking something that somebody else did really personal. And at the heart of it, it's not personal, right? So that's what I want to say with these cards. Now let's move on to the other side of the line. On the top we have the 9 of diamonds. Okay, so the 9 of diamonds, and do you notice a pattern? I'm going to put it down. We have a pattern here. We have a spade, diamond, spade, diamond. Again, this idea of fluctuation, ups and downs, either with money, because the 9 of diamonds can be a card that indicates extra money coming in, right? And I love it coming after the 10, because if we want to move beyond this, it may be a matter of looking at extra money coming in. How can we generate extra money? Right? And again, if it's not about money, it may be about energy levels, energy fluctuations, yeah? And also, too, if we go with the idea of energy fluctuations, it's nice to see the numbers increase, right? Because that represents, returning to a greater state of energy, stamina, things like that. Right? But the chief meaning for me is that this is a card that can talk about extra money coming in. So now let's look at the image and maybe talk more metaphorically. In the image, there is a great deal of change in the person's hands. Yeah. So this could just be, how do we handle changes when they come into our lives, right? Now remember, the 10 of spades can be about, like, are we fearful about change or changes when they show up? Or do we handle them appropriately, right? Now, I will confess that, when it came to change back in the day, I was a person who had a negative attitude about change. I always felt like the changes that were being presented to my life were somehow going to rob me of something. I was going to get the short end of the stick, so to speak, It was not going to be in my best interest, my best and highest good, right? That kind of thing. And so that there may be people who are watching this video who need to kind of maybe take a look at how they think about change, how they process change in their minds, that kind of thing. But the 9 is a number of gain and attainment. Now, the other thing I will say, and then I realized something I didn't do with fox, and I'm going to come back to that. But the 9 of diamonds is also known as the wish card. Now, in traditional playing card cartomancy, the 9 of hearts is the wish card, but this has a slight variation. This is also a wish card, but it's about the hopes and wishes of other people being projected onto you, right? So whereas the 9 of hearts is your own personal wishes that you want to see fulfilled, granted, what have you. When this card turns up, it's about other people projecting or putting on you their hopes and wishes. Right. And then the last thing I will say, and this is very random because none of the other cards would support this interpretation, but I feel like I want to put it out there, is that the Nine of Diamonds is also known as the Psychic Ability card. So let's kind of maybe change the wording on that to make it not sound so woo-woo, right? If that's the case, then this card may be offering as advice to kind of trust your gut, go with your instincts, right? Trust your intuition, right? Those are all kind of other words that we would use in place of the word psychic, yeah? Even though it is my firm belief that we are all psychic, right? But some people have a certain perception, ideas, beliefs about the word psychic, so it could just be a matter of going with your gut, trusting your hunches, trusting your instincts, trusting your intuition, whatever word you want to use for that. Now, coming back to the Fox card, because I presented the playing card inserts that would normally be on these cards, but I didn't do it with Fox. So this would be the Nine of Clubs. Right, so that would be, for me in my system of cartomancy, that would be gain or attainment around work. The Nine of Clubs is known as the time and distance card in my system. And so that could be something that's a long time coming or something that's a long way off, that kind of thing. But it's usually a spatial card. And because it talks about time and distance. I just wanted to mention that. Okay, so now let's take a look at the card underneath Nine of Diamonds. And here we have Letter. Okay, so now Letter is a card that talks about paperwork and documentation. Right? It represents all forms of written communication. So this could be a matter of text messaging and emails, things like that. But it could also be about paperwork and documentation, right? So now, if we go with the idea that maybe this card is talking about gain or attainment, you may receive some communication regarding that. It may be in the form of a text or an email. And it may have to do with extra money. I would go with, if it's about extra money coming in, it may be more in the form of an email. Or even snail mail. You may get a letter stating that, there's something going on and it requires, or it's about extra money coming in. So, forms of this could be things like a refund, bonus, pension, disability, unemployment. That would be, in alignment with maybe the Fox card, right? If we go here, maybe with the possibility of people either being terminated or laid off from job and employment. I didn't even think about that before until just now, right? And so then, if you've been terminated, from your job or employment, or, something has happened where you can maybe get unemployment, something of that nature, then there may be some paperwork or documentation that goes in alignment with that. But again, Letter is a card that talks about written forms of communication, paperwork, or documentation. Okay, so now let's take a look at the final two cards, rounding out this reading. Top one, we have the Four of Diamonds. And again, we have another card from the suit of diamonds. So here we have as ruling majority for the playing cards at the top. And I did it again. I'm going to come back to Letter. We have the ruling majority being the suit of diamonds. So again, this would be, about material matters. So it could be money, finance, career, physical well-being, energy. And then the Four of Diamonds in particular, going with the image, here we have a safety deposit box. For me, this card can talk about financial, suit of diamonds, stability and security. That's the 4, right? And I just realized that the 4 is repeating. So again, with that, there's a nod to issues regarding stability and security. Right? So it could be that we start off the week with our minds on stability and security, and then by the week's end, we're putting energy towards, actually producing in the physical world, stability and security. So that is a safe deposit box in the image, so it could just be a matter of saving, right? And so here with the 2 of diamonds and the 4 of diamonds, we have an interesting dichotomy here. Here we have taking a look at money coming in and going out, and how we can retain more money, right? And extra money. How can we maybe squirrel away extra money? But also, too, consider why you're doing that. I'm feeling led and got it to come back to the 10 of spades. Are we doing it from a place of fear, right? And it may be taking a look at that mindset. Now, other ideas for the 4 of diamonds is that somebody may be embarking on something that is requiring some form of certification. That brings us back to letter, right? This card can be about certificates for me. And I thought that would be worth noting because of the letter card. Now, this card can also be about retention. So it could be about storing things, physical things, creating storage, or looking at how we store things, how we contain things. But usually for me, it's more about financial accounts, like savings accounts, things like that. And maybe something for our long-term material and financial security and stability. Now, I want to come back to this letter card. So the letter card, the playing card insert for the letter card, is the 7 of spades. And so for me, in my system of cartomancy, the 7 of spades can be talking about wanting to improve on something. That's the 7. 7 is an improvement, but attached to a spade, it could be about stagnation, a delay, wanting to improve, a challenge, or a problem. And if I pair that with the letter card, it could be in the form of paperwork or documentation. The paperwork or the documentation is going to be in the service to improving a problem or a challenge or a difficulty. Okay, and so now the final card. Here we have the mountain. Okay, and I love this. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about it from the position of what I just said regarding the 7 of spades as a playing card. Right, so this card is about challenges, blocks, obstacles. As the last card in the line, it can talk about that there's going to be some form of delay, some form of setback, maybe even something being postponed. And again, here we have, with the letter card, if we read these as a pair, then there may be a message in written form regarding something that's being delayed, or there's a setback, or something even being postponed. Right? But the thing about the mountain is that it is not insurmountable. Right? It can be overcome. It's just a matter of it's a setback. Right? Now, the only other thing I will say from a location type standpoint is that mountain can represent remote areas, right? So there may be issues or challenges with getting a message to a remote area. If we're talking snail mail, yeah? Right, if we're talking about email, maybe not so much unless there's a problem with the email address. But from a physical location type standpoint, mountain would be talking about remote areas. Right, so again, mountain talks about blocks, challenges, obstacles. I'm looking at it as the last card in the line, that there's going to be some form of setback, delay, or even something being postponed. If I line these 2 cards up, it may have to do with storage, or putting money aside, something of that nature. There may be a little bump in the road regarding that. And then the mountain card for the insert has the 8 of clubs. So if we go here, taking a look at the inserts that I've mentioned, we had a club here for the fox card and a club here for the mountain. Now, in Lenormand Cartomancy, the suit of clubs is the most challenging suit, right? If you go with the meanings of fox and the meanings of mountain. So again, even we had 2 spades up here, so a little bit of a challenge here. We had a little bit of a challenge down here. So it could just be a matter of what are we going to do to move through the challenges that we are presented with. And for some people, it's going to involve either physical well-being, financial well-being, issues regarding stability and security. Maybe with the Lenormand, it's going to center on job, employment, or feeling that we have to do certain things to survive or to claim a greater sense of independence. And so on that note, I'm going to go ahead and end this week's Oracle Outlook video reading here. If you made it to this point in the video with me, I thank you for giving me the gift of your time. I never take that lightly. This is James Himm Mitchell signing off, and I look forward to sharing this space with you again in our next video reading together. And remember, if you liked the Lenormand Glyphs deck, I will be leaving a link to it in the description box below. Check it out, and if you're feeling called or guided to support Ismael by getting a deck, please do so. I would love it. And I would love it if you circle back. If you're going to do it, circle back in the comments and let me know that you did it, so I could give you some love. Okay? So again, James Himm Mitchell signing off. Take care and have a great week.